In a modest house on the edge of the cliff, Aileen watched the chaos from her window, sheltered in the warmth of her home. At dawn, the first rays of sun timidly filtered through the dense grey clouds. Aileen got out of her bed, wrapped herself in a blanket, and headed to the kitchen. She made a simple cup of tea, and, like every morning since November, she placed breadcrumbs on the windowsill to feed the seagulls. The grateful birds flocked, creating a spectacle that offered Aileen a moment of solace in her loneliness. As she watched the seagulls, memories of her childhood began to invade her mind. She remembered the days when she lived with her mother, Annie, and her younger sister, Clara, in a family house with a garden full of flowers. Mike, her mother's boyfriend, was a kind man who kept everything in order. However, those happy days faded when Annie, longing for a lighter and more festive life, decided to kick Mike out of her life. Since then, the family had fallen into disarray. Annie had resumed her partying and drinking habits, often leaving Aileen and Clara alone. Aileen, despite her young age, assumed the responsibility of taking care of her younger sister. She told them stories about herself to comfort her and keep her distracted from the harsh reality that surrounded them. Her neighbor, Mrs. Smith, stepped in from time to time to help, providing meals and support. It was also Mrs. Smith who got Annie a job as a cleaner in a factory, offering brief stability before Annie fell back into her old habits. Aileen sighed, shaking her head to clear the painful memories of her. She focused on the seagulls that were still pecking at the breadcrumbs. Although her current life was full of challenges, she found small moments of joy and hope in her daily routine. Feeding the seagulls had become a healing ritual, a way of remembering that despite everything, life continued, and there was always room for goodness and hope. With a slight smile on her lips, Aileen walked away from the window and began to prepare for her day. She was determined to face difficulties with the same strength and resilience that she had always shown. The storm outside was a reflection of the internal storm she had overcome, and although she knew the road ahead would not be easy, she was determined to keep going, one day at a time. In those days, Aileen's family home was full of life and laughter. The garden bloomed with the flowers that Aileen cared for with so much care. Mike, the boyfriend of her mother, Annie, was a kind and hard-working man. He kept everything in order, repaired broken things, and always had a smile and a kind word for Aileen and her younger sister, Clara. Under his care, the house was a safe and loving refuge. Annie, although she was a loving mother, had always longed for something more than domestic life. Nights out and the search for fun had always called to her. One day, after a particularly heated argument, Annie decided that Mike no longer fit her vision of a lighter, more festive life. She kicked him out of her life, and with her departure, the stability and peace of the family crumbled. Without Mike, life in the house changed drastically. Annie, feeling free of responsibilities, resumed her partying and drinking habits. The nights were filled with loud music and unknown laughter, while Annie went out more and more frequently, leaving Aileen and Clara alone. The absence of her mother left Aileen in a position of responsibility that no girl her age should have to assume. Aileen struggled to maintain a sense of normality for her sister. She told him bedtime stories, she tried to prepare meals with the little they had, and she tried to keep the house in order. Mrs. Smith's occasional visits were a welcome respite. The kind neighbor provided food and company, offering a ray of hope in the midst of the chaos. Mrs. Smith, a sturdy woman with grey hair and an ever-present smile, had been a constant in Aileen's life for as long as she could remember. Seeing the family's desperate situation, she decided to intervene more actively. She got Annie a job as a cleaner in a local factory, hoping that the job responsibility would bring some stability to Annie's life, and therefore to that of her daughters. For a brief period, it seemed like life could get better. Annie was going to work. He worked regularly, and the money he brought helped cover basic needs. The nights out became less frequent, and family laughter began to fill the house again. However, this peace was short-lived. Annie, unable to resist his old habits, relapsed into her nights of partying and drinking. The absences became longer and more frequent, and Aileen was once again forced to assume the role of mother to Clara. Mrs. Smith's efforts and brief period of stability stood as a sad reminder of what could have been. Aileen, deep in thought, looked around her and saw the scars of her past reflected in the state of her current home. Although the house in Valverde was modest and in need of repairs, it represented a new beginning for her, a place where she could try to build a better life away from the shadows of her past. Determined not to repeat her mother's mistakes, Aileen promised herself that no matter how difficult the circumstances were, she would always find the strength to move forward and take care of her loved ones. The echo of her memories was still present in her mind as she prepared to face a new day. The storm outside had passed, but Aileen's internal storm still continued, constantly reminding her of the struggles she had overcome and those she still had ahead of her. With renewed determination, Aileen closed the door behind her and prepared to face whatever the day might bring. Aileen remembered with pain the dark days that followed Mike's departure. Without his stabilizing presence, Annie quickly fell into a cycle of self-destruction. The nights that were previously filled with stories and family laughter became endless parties and nighttime escapades. The house, which had been a refuge of love and security, became a place of uncertainty and fear. Annie, increasingly absorbed by her desire for fun, began to disappear for days on end. Aileen, still a child, was forced to take on responsibilities that not even many adults could handle. Desperate to maintain a sense of normality, she tried to take care of Clara, preparing simple meals with what little they had and making sure her little sister felt safe and loved despite everything. The situation at home was increasingly unsustainable. Annie, despite having gotten a job as a cleaner in a factory thanks to Mrs. Smith, could not maintain stability. Her relapse into alcoholism and constant partying resulted in absences from work, putting the family's source of income at risk. Aileen, with a maturity that belied her youth, decided that she must do something to help. She approached the local bookstore, a place that had always been her refuge, and she asked for a job. Her owner, an elderly man named Don Manuel, had known her since she was little and, seeing her desperation, agreed to hire her for small tasks. Working in the bookstore became a lifeline for Aileen. Not only did she allow him to earn some money to help out at home, but it also offered him an escape from the chaotic reality. The afternoons in the bookstore, surrounded by books and the smell of old paper, gave her a break and a moment of peace. Just when Aileen was beginning to find a tenuous stability in the midst of chaos, life threw them an unexpected surprise. Annie, in one of her periods of sobriety, gave birth to a boy, Luke. The baby's arrival brought a ray of hope to the family. For a brief moment it seemed like Annie was determined to change. Aileen and Clara dedicated themselves to caring for little Luke, finding in him a new source of joy and purpose. However, hope was short-lived. Annie, unable to resist the pull of her old habits, fell back into the cycle of partying and drinking. The absences became more frequent and longer, leaving Aileen in charge not only of Clara, but now also of a baby. The nights were filled with crying and despair, and Aileen, although exhausted, never stopped caring for her siblings. One day the situation reached a critical point. Annie, after a night of excesses, suffered a serious hemorrhage. Aileen, terrified, called an ambulance. The hospital was far away, and every minute that passed seemed like an eternity. Aileen stayed by her mother's side throughout the journey, holding onto her hand and praying silently. At the hospital, the doctors did everything they could, but the damage was too severe. Annie, who had fought her own demons for so long, finally succumbed. Her death left Aileen devastated, facing an emptiness and responsibility that seemed insurmountable. Organizing her mother's funeral was a daunting task for Aileen. With the help of Mrs. Smith, she managed to reduce costs and prepare a dignified, although simple, farewell. News of Annie's death spread quickly through the neighborhood, and although only a few neighbors attended the funeral, the community's support was heartwarming. During her funeral, Aileen stayed strong, holding Clara and Luke as tears rolled down her cheeks. She felt that she should be the pillar for her brothers, the only anchor in a sea of uncertainty. With a broken voice, she promised her mother that she would take care of her family, that she would not let her sacrifice go in vain. After her funeral, life became even more difficult. Aileen continued working at the bookstore and doing everything she could to support her siblings. Mrs. Smith continued to help as much as she could, but the nights were lonely and full of worries. Aileen knew the road ahead would be arduous, but she was determined to keep her family united and safe. Every day, Aileen woke up with renewed determination. She knew she had to be strong, not only for herself, but for Clara and Luke. The hardships of her past had molded her into a resilient and determined young woman, and although her future was uncertain, she was ready to face any challenge that came her way. The day of Annie's funeral, the sky was cloudy and a cold wind blew through the streets. The small chapel where the ceremony was being held was almost empty, with only a few neighbors and acquaintances present. Aileen, with Clara and Luke next to her, maintained a serene expression as she looked at her mother's coffin. Mrs. Smith, moved by Aileen's strength, approached her and put a hand on her shoulder. "You are a very strong girl, Aileen. Your mother would be proud of you," she said in a soft voice. "Thank you, Mrs. Smith," Aileen responded, trying to keep her composure. "I just want Clara and Luke to be okay." Clara, clinging to Aileen's hand, whispered, "Is Mom in heaven, Aileen? Is she watching us?" Aileen nodded, holding back tears. "Yes, Clara, Mom is watching us and she wants us to be strong. We will always be together." Days after the funeral, life began to return to its chaotic normality. However, the tranquility was brief. One afternoon, while Aileen was working at the bookstore, two people from Child Protective Services came to her house. Mrs. Smith, who was taking care of Clara and Luke, received them with concern. "Good afternoon, we are from the Department of Child Protective Services," one of the women said, showing her ID. "We have received reports about the situation of these children, and we need to talk to the older sister." Mrs. Smith, with a pale face, tried to remain calm. "Aileen is working right now, but I can call the bookstore and have her come right away." Aileen came running home shortly after, her heart in her throat. When she entered, she saw Clara and Luke sitting on the sofa, looking at her with eyes full of uncertainty. "What's going on?" Aileen asked, trying not to show her fear. "Miss Aileen, we have received reports about the situation in your home. We are here to evaluate the well-being of her siblings," explained the social worker. "We need to make sure they are in a safe and appropriate environment." "I'm doing everything I can to take care of them," Aileen said firmly. "I work in the bookstore, and Mrs. Smith helps us a lot. My brothers are fine with me." "We understand her concern, but we need to do a full evaluation. In the meantime, we need to take her siblings to a temporary location," the social worker responded in a soft but firm voice. Aileen felt like the world was falling apart around her. She knelt in front of Clara and Luke, taking her small hands. "I don't want them to go," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I promise I'll do my best to bring us together again. Just be strong for a while, okay?" Clara, with tears in her eyes, nodded. "I promise we will wait, Aileen. I know you will find us." Luke, too young to fully understand, simply hugged Aileen tightly. "I don't want to leave, Elvie." "I know, honey, but everything will be okay. I love you too more than anything in the world," Aileen said, hugging them tightly one last time before the social workers took them away. Aileen was taken to a different orphanage than her siblings. The days were long and lonely, filled with hostility from the other girls who saw her as competition for attention and limited resources. Aileen, with her unwavering determination, stood firm. Every night she fell asleep with the promise that she would find a way to reunite her family. One night, while she was in her bed, one of the orphanage girls named Isabel approached her. "I heard you're planning to escape," she whispered. "She's crazy. Where would you go?" Aileen looked at her, all with determination. "To Valverde. I have heard of a place where I could find refuge. I cannot stay here while my brothers need me." Isabel nodded slowly. "If you really plan to do it, I will help you, but you must promise me that you will be careful." "I promise," Aileen said, grateful for the unexpected support. The night was dark and silent when Aileen slipped away from the orphanage. With her heart pounding, she crossed the backyard and slipped through a crack in the fence, helped by Isabel, who kept watch. "Good luck, Aileen," Isabel whispered. "Find your brothers." "Thank you, Isabel, I will," Aileen replied, whispering as she ran toward freedom. With a light backpack and unwavering determination, Aileen began her journey towards Valverde, a small coastal town that she had heard about in a conversation between adults in her former home. The trip to Valverde was exhausting. Aileen walked for days, facing the cold and the rain, but her determination never wavered. Finally, after what seemed like weeks, she arrived at the outskirts of Valverde. The view of the sea and the fishermen's houses offered him a glimmer of hope. She found refuge in an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. The house, although in poor condition, provided a roof and protection from the elements. Upon exploring the place, she discovered that it had belonged to an old woman who no longer visited her. It was a makeshift shelter, but it was enough to start over. Aileen knew that she needed a job to support herself and eventually reunite her siblings. She walked the streets of Valverde, asking local stores and restaurants if they needed help. After several rejections, she saw a poster on the bulletin board of the town store. Looking for a caregiver for a disabled person. Contact Kate. Aileen, hoping that this would be her chance, wrote down her address and headed to the indicated house. Kate's residence was a large, well-kept house in stark contrast to her own. Nervously, she knocked on the door. Kate, an elegant woman with a critical look, opened the door. "How can I help you?" she asked, looking Aileen up and down. "I'm here for the caregiver announcement," Aileen said in a firm voice, trying to hide her nervousness. "I have experience taking care of my siblings, and I am willing to work hard." Kate stared at her for a moment, before stepping back and inviting her inside. "Come in. I need someone to take care of my husband, Matthew. He's been disabled since he suffered a brutal attack. I need someone who can handle the responsibility." Aileen nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and concern. "I'll do whatever it takes. I just need a chance." Kate seemed to gauge her determination and finally nodded. "Very good. You can start tomorrow. I hope you are as capable as you say." Aileen's first day at Kate's house was challenging. Matthew, Kate's husband, was confined to a wheelchair, and his look was a mixture of sadness and resignation. At first, Matthew barely responded to Aileen, mired in his own pain and despair. "Good morning, Matthew. I'm Aileen. I'll be taking care of you starting today," he said softly, trying to establish a connection. Matthew barely looked up, murmuring an almost inaudible greeting. Aileen did not let herself be discouraged. She began to perform her chores diligently, cleaning the room, preparing meals, and helping Matthew with her exercises. Every day she tried to talk to him, sharing stories and little anecdotes from her life. After several days of tireless effort, Aileen noticed small changes in Matthew. She began to respond more often, albeit briefly, and her gaze was no longer so lost in despair. One day, while she was helping Matthew with her exercises, he looked her directly in the eyes for the first time. "Thank you for not giving up," Matthew murmured, his voice barely audible. Aileen smiled, feeling a ray of hope. "I never give up, Matthew. We will get through this together." As the days turned into weeks, the relationship between Aileen and Matthew grew stronger. Aileen's constant presence and loving care began to make a real difference in the life of Matthew, who was beginning to show signs of improvement, both physically and emotionally. Aileen woke up early on her second day at work, determined to continue the progress she had made with Matthew. Kate's house, although imposing, felt cold and distant. Kate's superficial elegance contrasted sharply with the warmth that Aileen tried to bring to the home. While she was preparing breakfast, Kate entered the kitchen. "Good morning," Kate said, her tone dry and formal. "I hope Matthew hasn't caused you too much trouble." "Good morning, Mrs. Kate," Aileen responded with a smile. Too polite. "Matthew has been very kind. I'm sure that with time, he will improve." Kate nodded without much interest. "I hope you're right. I don't want this to drag on any longer than it has to." Without another word, she headed to the dining room, leaving Aileen to her thoughts. After serving Matthew breakfast, Aileen began helping him with his daily exercises. Despite Matthew's initial resistance, Aileen was patient and motivating. "I know this is difficult, Matthew, but every little effort counts," she told him as he made slow, painful movements. "It all seems so pointless," Matthew murmured, his voice full of frustration and hopelessness. Aileen knelt next to him, looking into his eyes. "Nothing is useless. Every step we take is a victory. Don't give up, Matthew. I'm here with you." Matthew looked at her, surprised by the sincerity in her words. Slowly he nodded, determined to try one more time. Over time, Matthew began to open up more to Aileen. The exercise sessions became moments of conversation, where Matthew shared fragments of his life before the accident. "He used to be an active man," he said one day, his voice heavy with nostalgia. "I loved sailing and hiking. Now that all seems like a distant dream." Those memories are still a part of you, Aileen replied softly, and with work and patience, we can make you enjoy life again. Aileen also shared parts of her own story, although cautiously. She told him about her love of books and her desire to reunite her family. Matthew listened attentively, finding in Aileen a source of inspiration and comfort. One afternoon, while Aileen was helping Matthew with his exercises in the garden, a young man entered the house with a contemptuous attitude. "Who is this girl?" he asked, looking at Aileen with disdain. "Daniel, this is Aileen, our new caregiver," answered Kate, who had left when she heard the door. "She's here to help your father." Daniel, Matthew and Kate's son, was a spoiled and arrogant young man. He had grown up in wealth and had never had to face real hardships. He looked at Aileen with disdain. "I hope you know what you're doing," he said with a condescending tone. Aileen, remaining calm, returned his gaze. "I'm doing my best to help your father. We all want him to recover." "I hope so," Daniel replied before heading towards the house without another word. Daniel's presence introduced a new tension in the home. The young man, accustomed to a life of luxury and no responsibilities, did not view Aileen's efforts favorably. He often complained about the exercise sessions and the constant attention towards his father, preferring that the house remain in its previous chaotic balance. One night, while Aileen was reading Matthew in her room, Daniel burst in. "This is ridiculous," he said irritably. "This whole charade of recovery. It's not going to change anything." Matthew looked at him sadly. "Daniel, Aileen is just trying to help. I'm trying to get better." "It's useless," Daniel insisted. "You're just wasting your time." Aileen, feeling the need to intervene, stood up. "Daniel, I understand this is difficult for everyone, but Matthew is making progress. He needs our support, not our skepticism." Daniel snorted and left the room, leaving a tense atmosphere behind him. Despite the tensions, Aileen's efforts began to bear fruit. One day, while she was helping Matthew walk with a cane, he managed to take several steps without her help. "I did it," Matthew said, with a mixture of disbelief and joy. "Yes, you did," Aileen replied, smiling widely. "Every day you are stronger." Matthew looked at her, his eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you, Aileen. I don't know what he would do without you." Aileen squeezed her hand. "We're in this together, Matthew. Don't give up now." The days passed and Matthew's progress continued. Every morning, Aileen helped him with his exercises, encouraging him and celebrating each small progress. Matthew, although at times frustrated by the slowness of his recovery, was beginning to feel a spark of hope light up inside of him. "Today we will walk a little further, Matthew," Aileen said one morning as she helped him out of the wheelchair. Matthew nodded, his determination renewed by Aileen's confidence. "Let's do it." The afternoons were times of reflection and connection. Matthew and Aileen used to sit in the garden, enjoying the sea breeze while they talked about their lives. Matthew talked about his younger years, his passions and the dreams he had had before the accident. "I always wanted to travel the world," Matthew confessed one day, "see exotic places and learn about different cultures." Aileen looked at him tenderly. "You can still do it, Matthew. Life is not over for you. With time and effort, you could walk again and fulfill those dreams." Matthew smiled, although with a touch of melancholy. "Thanks to you, I'm starting to believe it's possible." The relationship between Aileen and Daniel continued to be tense. Daniel, who barely visited his father, showed little interest in Matthew's progress. One afternoon, while Aileen was helping Matthew practice walking in the garden, Daniel appeared, clearly upset. "Why do you keep doing this?" Daniel snapped. "It's a waste of time, Father. You're better off resting." Matthew, leaning on his cane, turned to his son. "Daniel, I'm trying to get my life back. Going. Aileen has been a blessing to me. You can't understand it because you've never had to really fight for anything." "That's not fair," Daniel replied. "I've always done the best I could." Aileen intervened gently. "Daniel, your father needs support, not negativity. If you really care, you should be here for him." Daniel, furious, turned around and left. Aileen sighed, feeling the tension in the air. Despite the difficulties with Daniel, Matthew continued to make progress. One day, while they were in the garden, Matthew managed to walk without help for several minutes. Aileen applauded excitedly. "You did it, Matthew. I'm so proud of you," she exclaimed. Matthew, breathing hard but with a smile on his face, nodded. "Thank you, Aileen. I couldn't have done it without you." One night after a particularly exhausting day, Matthew and Aileen sat in the living room. Matthew, observing Aileen, noticed the sadness in his eyes. "You've always listened to me, Aileen," Matthew said. "Now I want to know more about you. What brought you here?" Aileen sighed deeply, feeling that the time had come to share her story. "I lost my parents at a young age. My mother died and my siblings and I were separated by Child Protective Services. I have been struggling to find a way to reunite ever since." Matthew looked at her with compassion. "You are incredibly strong, Aileen. Your dedication to your family is admirable." "I will do everything I can to find them and be together again," Aileen said, determination in her voice. The relationship between Aileen and Matthew grew even stronger after that night. Matthew, now with renewed purpose, vowed to help Aileen find her siblings. "You are not alone in this, Aileen. I will help you in any way I can," he promised. Aileen, touched by his promise, felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, Matthew. Together, we can overcome anything." Kate, concerned about the constant tensions between Daniel and Matthew, decided it was time to take drastic measures. She spoke with her lawyer and arranged a meeting with a notary for Matthew to sign documents that would transfer some property and assets to Daniel. "Matthew, this is for the good of our family," Kate said one afternoon as she served tea in the living room. "We need to make sure Daniel is well provided for." Matthew, although weak, looked up with determination. "I won't sign anything without reading it carefully, Kate. I'm not sure this is the best solution." Kate frowned. "Matthew, this is what is best for everyone. Daniel needs to know that he has a secure future." Aileen, who had been listening from the door, felt a growing distrust of Kate. She decided to stay alert and protect Matthew's interests. The day of the meeting arrived. Kate, accompanied by a notary and her lawyer, showed up at the house with a determined attitude. Matthew, sitting in his wheelchair, carefully observed the documents that were placed in front of him. "Matthew, just sign here," Kate said impatiently. "It's just a procedure." Matthew took the documents and studied them carefully. "This seems like more than a simple paperwork, Kate. I want to be sure of what I'm signing." The notary, a middle-aged woman with glasses, explained in legal terms what the documents entailed. Matthew, after listening to her attentively, looked up at Kate. "I will not sign this," he said firmly. "I need time to consider all the implications." Kate, furious, looked at Matthew in disbelief. "How can you be so stubborn? This is for our future." "And also for mine," Matthew replied calmly. "I won't make hasty decisions." Desperate, Kate addressed Aileen privately. "Aileen, I need your help. Matthew trusts you. Convince him to sign the documents." Aileen looked at her suspiciously. "Kate, I can't do that. Matthew needs to make his own decisions. I'm not here to manipulate him." Kate came closer with a pleading expression. "Please, Aileen, it's for the good of all of us." Aileen maintained her position. "I'm sorry, Kate. My priority is Matthew's well-being. I cannot betray his trust." That night, while Matthew rested, Aileen sat next to him. "Matthew, I know today was difficult, but I am here to support you in whatever you decide." Matthew looked at her with gratitude. "Thank you, Aileen. Your support means a lot to me. I just want to do the right thing for everyone." Aileen took her hand. "We'll do it together. You're not alone in this." The next day, Daniel confronted Aileen. "I know what you're doing. You're poisoning my father's mind against us." Aileen looked at him firmly. "Daniel, all I'm doing is taking care of your father and making sure he makes informed decisions. You should want the same for him." "I just want him to recover and for everything to go back to normal," Daniel said, his voice filled with frustration. "Then support him," Aileen replied. "He needs his family now more than ever." "Working here has given me a reason to keep going," Aileen continued. "Helping you, Matthew, has given me purpose, but I have never stopped thinking about my brothers. Every day I wonder where they are and if they are okay." Matthew felt deep respect for Aileen. "You have sacrificed so much for others. I am determined to help you find your brothers. You are not alone in this." Aileen looked at Matthew with gratitude. "Thank you, Matthew. Knowing that I have your support means a lot to me. Together, we can overcome anything." Matthew smiled. "We will, Aileen, I promise." The conversation with Matthew had been a relief for Aileen. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't carrying the weight of the world alone. That night, as she prepared to sleep, she felt a peace she had not known in years. The next day, Matthew began making calls and using his contacts to help Aileen in the search for her brothers. "I have friends in several places who could help us," he told her. "We will leave no stone unturned until we find them." Aileen, moved by Matthew's commitment, felt renewed hope. "Thank you, Matthew. I know that together we will make it." The relationship between Aileen and Matthew grew even stronger after that night. Matthew, with renewed purpose, vowed to help Aileen find her siblings. "You are not alone in this, Aileen. I will help you in any way I can," he promised. Aileen, touched by his promise, felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, Matthew. Together, we can overcome anything." Aileen decided to seek additional help for Matthew's recovery. She had heard of a local healer named Marta, known for her skills in traditional medicine and her holistic approach. With Matthew's consent, Aileen organized a visit to her house. Marta, a middle-aged woman with a calming presence, arrived one afternoon and was warmly received by Aileen. "Thank you for coming, Marta. Matthew has made great progress, but we think he could benefit from your help." Marta smiled kindly. "I'm here to help in any way he can. Let's see how we can further support his recovery." Marta began working with Matthew, introducing a series of exercises and alternative treatments. She used medicinal herbs and therapeutic massages to relieve pain and improve Matthew's mobility. Additionally, she taught Aileen acupressure techniques to apply between visits. "The body has an incredible capacity to heal, Matthew," Marta explained as she applied an ointment to her legs. "With patience and perseverance, we can continue to see improvements." Matthew, although skeptical at first, began to feel the benefits of the therapies. "Thank you, Marta. I am willing to try anything that can help me improve." After several weeks of intensive work with Marta and Aileen, Matthew began to notice a significant difference. One day, while practicing walking in the garden with Aileen at his side, he stopped and dropped his cane. "I want to try walking without this," he said, his voice full of determination. Aileen, although worried, supported him. "I'm here with you, Matthew. Let's do it together." Matthew took a tentative step, then another and another. Although his movements were slow and unsteady, he managed to walk several meters without the cane before stopping, exhausted but smiling. "You did it, Matthew. I'm so proud of you," Aileen exclaimed, hugging him with joy. Matthew, with tears of gratitude in his eyes, nodded. "Thanks to you and Marta, I am achieving things I never thought possible." With his newfound mobility and confidence, Matthew decided it was time to take back control of his business. He had been a successful businessman before his accident, and now, with Aileen's help, he was ready to take on his responsibilities again. "Aileen, I want you to help me review the financial statements and plan my return to the company," he said one day as they sat in the study. "Of course, Matthew. I'll be happy to help you with anything you need," Aileen responded, excited by the prospect of seeing him regain his former life. They worked together for hours, reviewing documents and strategizing. Matthew felt revitalized, filled with new energy and purpose. Matthew's return to the business was not well received by Kate. She had counted on maintaining control of the family finances and was not prepared to give up power. "Matthew, I don't think it's wise for you to go back to work so soon," Kate said, trying to sound reasonable. "You could relapse." Matthew looked at her firmly. "Kate, I have worked hard to get here. I need to regain control of my life and my business. I will not let anything stop me." Kate, frustrated and feeling that she was losing control, tried one last time to persuade Matthew. "Think about Daniel. He needs security too." "Daniel will take his place in the business when he is ready," Matthew responded. "But now it's time for me to take back what's mine." Matthew's recovery not only brought changes in his professional life, but also in his personal life. One night, after a quiet dinner, Matthew took Aileen's hand and looked into her eyes. "Aileen, I have no words to express how grateful I am for everything you have done for me. You have been my rock, my guide, and my hope. You have given me my life back." Aileen, surprised and excited, felt her heart pounding. "Matthew, it has been an honor to be by your side and help you through this." Matthew smiled, taking a small box out of his pocket. "Aileen, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Aileen's eyes as she nodded vigorously. Yes, Matthew. Yes, I will marry you. With their engagement sealed, Matthew and Aileen began planning their future together. Matthew also used his connections to begin the search for Aileen's siblings, Clara and Luke. Let's go find them, Aileen. I won't rest until you're reunited with your family, Matthew promised. Aileen, full of hope and love, felt stronger than ever. Thank you, Matthew. Together, we will achieve everything. With her engagement and Matthew's recovery, Aileen felt that she was about to fulfill all of her dreams. Matthew, faithful to her promise, used his connections to begin the search for Clara and Luke. He hired a private investigator, a man named Joachim, known for his ability to find missing people. I will do everything possible to find them, Mrs. Aileen, Joachim said during their first meeting. I will need any additional information you can provide. Aileen gave him old photos and details about the orphanages where they had been. Thank you, Joachim. This means everything to me. Days turned into weeks as Joachim worked tirelessly to track down Clara and Luke. Every night, Matthew and Aileen waited with hope for new news. Although the process was slow and full of uncertainty, the hope of reuniting the family never faded. One afternoon, Joachim called Aileen to report a possible trail. I found an orphanage where Clara and Luke stayed a few years ago. It seems they were transferred to a foster family shortly after. Aileen felt a mixture of joy and anxiety. Where are you now? I'm following that trail. I'll keep you informed, Joachim assured. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived. Joachim called Matthew and Aileen with good news. I have found Clara. She is living in a nearby city with an adoptive family. She seems like she's fine. Aileen could not contain her tears of joy. Can we see her? Joachim nodded. I have arranged a meeting. They are waiting for your visit. Matthew and Aileen went to the address provided by Joachim. When they arrived, a kind woman greeted them and led them inside. In the living room, a young woman stood up nervously when she saw them enter. Clara, Aileen whispered, her eyes filling with tears. Aileen, Clara responded, running to hug her. The two sisters hugged each other tightly, crying with joy and relief. After the hugs and tears, Clara told them her story. The family that adopted me has been very good to me. I have thought about you and Luke every day, Aileen. Do you know where Luke is? Aileen asked, hope shining in her eyes. Clara nodded. Yes, we have kept in touch. He is living with another family in the same city. I can take you to him. With Clara's help, Aileen and Matthew went to the house where Luke lived. Upon arrival, they were greeted by a friendly couple who invited them inside. Luke, now a young teenager, entered the living room, confused but curious. Luke, Aileen said softly, extending her hand. Aileen, Luke asked, his voice full of wonder. Yes, it's me. I've looked for you for so long, Aileen replied, hugging him tightly. After the emotional meeting, Matthew, Aileen, Clara and Luke spent the day catching up and sharing stories. Matthew, seeing the happiness in Aileen's eyes, felt more determined than ever to keep the family together. I want them to live with us, Matthew said one night while they were all gathered in the living room. Our house is big, and there is space for everyone. Clara and Luke looked at Aileen, who nodded with a smile. We'd love to, Clara said. It would be a dream come true. The move-in process was quick. Clara and Luke quickly adapted to their new home, and Matthew and Aileen's house was filled with laughter and love. The days of fighting and separation seemed like a distant memory, replaced by the joy of being together again. Thank you, Matthew, Aileen said one night as they watched Clara and Luke play in the garden. You have made this miracle possible. Matthew hugged her tenderly. We did it together, Aileen. We are a family, and we always will be. Life in Matthew and Aileen's house changed drastically with the arrival of Clara and Luke. Laughter and youthful energy filled every corner. Aileen, for the first time in a long time, felt that her life was complete. One morning, while they were having breakfast together, Matthew observed everyone with a smile. I'm glad to see the house so full of life, he commented. This is what I always wanted. Us too, Matthew, Aileen replied, holding her hand lovingly. Having Clara and Luke here makes everything perfect. With his family together and his health improving, Matthew decided it was time to regain full control of his company. One day, he called a meeting with the board members. I want to thank you for keeping the business going during my absence, he said. but now I'm ready to come back and lead again." The board members, although surprised, showed their support for him. Matthew felt that his purpose and energy were renewed. "Aileen, I need you to come with me on this," he told her after the meeting. "Your support has been crucial and I would like you to be part of the company." Aileen, surprised but excited, accepted. "It will be an honor, Matthew. Together we can take the business to new heights." Clara and Luke also began to adapt to their new life. Clara, always curious and studious, enrolled in a local school where she quickly made friends and excelled in her studies. Luke, with his energy and enthusiasm, joined several sports clubs and found a new love for soccer. "I'm so proud of you, Clara," Aileen said one afternoon as she helped her sister with homework. "You've grown so much." "All thanks to you, Aileen," Clara responded with a smile. "You were always my inspiration." Aileen began to get involved in Matthew's company, assuming responsibilities in administration and strategic planning. Her dedication and work ethic soon made her stand out among the employees. "Aileen, you have a gift for this," Matthew told her during a meeting. "Your fresh perspective is exactly what we needed." Aileen smiled. "Thank you, Matthew. I want this company to be as successful as you dreamed." Meanwhile, preparations for Matthew and Aileen's wedding were in full swing. They decided to hold an intimate ceremony in the garden of their home, surrounded by close friends and family. "I want this day to be perfect," Aileen said as she reviewed the details with Clara. I have a long way to get here." "And it will be," Clara assured. "We are all here for you." The wedding day arrived and the garden was beautifully decorated with flowers and lights. Aileen, dressed in an elegant white dress, walked towards the altar where Matthew was waiting for her, with a smile full of love and admiration. "We are here to celebrate the love between Matthew and Aileen," the officiant began, "a couple that has shown that with love and perseverance, any obstacle can be overcome." After the vows, Matthew and Aileen kissed to the applause and tears of joy of their loved ones. "I love you, Aileen," Matthew whispered. "Thank you for being my strength and my inspiration." "And I love you, Matthew," Aileen responded. "Together, we're invincible." The reception was a celebration filled with music, dancing, and laughter. Clara and Luke also participated, happy to see her sister finally find happiness. The family, united and full of love, enjoyed every moment. "This is just the beginning of our life together," Matthew said, as they watched the fireworks light up the night sky. "We have so much ahead of us." "Yes, Matthew," Aileen responded, resting her head on his shoulder. "And I'm excited for every second." Winter had arrived in Valverde, and with it the anticipation of the Christmas festivities. Matthew and Aileen's house was full of warmth and joy. Aileen woke up one morning with the excitement of preparing the house for Christmas. She knew this would be a special celebration, the first with her family together and as a married woman. "We are going to have the best Christmas of our lives," Aileen told Matthew while they had breakfast. "I want everything to be perfect." Matthew smiled. "With your enthusiasm, I'm sure it will be." Aileen and Clara decided to start decorating the Christmas tree. They went to the local market and chose the largest, leafiest fir tree they could find. When they took him home, Luke was already waiting with boxes full of decorations. "This tree is huge," Luke exclaimed enthusiastically. "We're going to need a lot of lights." "And many hands to decorate it," Aileen added, laughing. They spent the afternoon decorating the tree with lights, spheres, and garlands. Each ornament had a special meaning, and Clara made sure each one was carefully placed. Matthew watched from his chair, smiling as he watched his family enjoy the activity. Preparations for Christmas dinner began days in advance. Aileen, being an excellent cook, decided to prepare a variety of traditional dishes. Clara and Luke helped in the kitchen, learning family recipes and enjoying time together. "Clara, I need you to peel the potatoes while I prepare the turkey stuffing," Aileen instructed. "Of course, Aileen," Clara responded while Luke was busy mixing the ingredients for the cake. Aileen moved with grace and efficiency, her mind filled with memories of Christmases past and the hope of creating new, happy memories. "I want this dinner to be special, something we will remember forever." Valverde's neighbors also got involved in the preparations. Mrs. Smith, who had been a constant support for Aileen in the most difficult times, offered to bring some of her famous desserts. "Aileen, you can't do everything alone," Mrs. Smith said, handing her a tray of fritters. These desserts will be the perfect complement to your dinner." "Thank you, Mrs. Smith. You have always been like family to us," Aileen responded gratefully. Neighbors took turns visiting and helping with the preparations, each contributing something special. The community came together to ensure that this Christmas was unforgettable for Matthew and Aileen. Aileen decided to introduce some new traditions along with the old ones. One of them was writing letters to Santa Claus. Although Clara and Luke were older, they were excited by the idea. "Dear Santa," Clara wrote, "this year I just want my family to be happy and for us to stay together." Luke, although skeptical at first, joined the tradition with enthusiasm. "Dear Santa, thank you for giving me back my sister Aileen. I promise to be a good brother and always help." Aileen and Matthew also wrote their letters, sharing wishes and hopes for the future. They placed the letters in a special box that they would keep as a memory of their first Christmas together. Christmas Eve night arrived, and Matthew and Aileen's house was dazzling. The lights on the tree glowed, and the aroma of food filled the air. The neighbors began to arrive, each bringing a plate to share. The house was filled with laughter, conversation, and the Christmas spirit. Matthew raised a glass of wine and caught everyone's attention. "I want to thank each of you for being here tonight. This Christmas is special because we are surrounded of family and friends. We've been through a lot, but we've gotten here together. Let's toast to love, friendship, and family." Everyone raised their glasses and toasted, feeling the emotion of the moment. After dinner, it was time to exchange gifts. Aileen had spent weeks preparing personalized gifts for each family member and neighbors. The children opened their gifts with excitement, and the adults shared laughter and thanks. Matthew handed Aileen a small box wrapped in shiny paper. "This is a special gift for you," she said with a smile. Aileen opened the box to find a beautiful necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. "Matthew, it's beautiful. Thank you." "It's a symbol of my love and gratitude for everything you've done," Matthew said. "You are the heart of our family." After the neighbors said goodbye and the house quieted, Aileen and Matthew sat by the Christmas tree, watching the lights twinkle. Clara and Luke were fast asleep, exhausted by the excitement of the day. "This has been the best Christmas of my life," Aileen said, resting her head on Matthew's shoulder. "And mine too," Matthew replied. "We've been through so much, but we're here together, and that's all that matters." "Yes," Aileen agreed. "With love and family, we can overcome anything." The sun rose over Valverde, illuminating Matthew and Aileen's house with a warm golden light. Aileen was the first to wake up, feeling a mixture of peace and joy as she remembered the wonderful night of Christmas Eve. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Matthew, and headed to the kitchen to prepare a special breakfast. While she was cooking, Clara and Luke woke up and joined her, her faces still full of emotion from the night before. "Good morning, Aileen," Clara said, hugging her. "Thank you for the best Christmas of our lives." "Yes, thank you, Aileen," Luke added, smiling from ear to ear. "It was incredible." Aileen hugged them both, feeling deep gratitude for having them by her side. "It was everyone's effort," she said. "Now, how about we have breakfast and then take a walk on the beach?" After breakfast, the family bundled up and went out into the cool morning air. The beach was quiet, with only the sound of waves lapping gently on the shore. Matthew, leaning on his cane but walking with more confidence than ever, smiled as he watched his family enjoy the walk. Clara and Luke ran through the sand, collecting shells and laughing. Aileen walked next to Matthew, taking his arm and enjoying the peace of the moment. "This is the life I always dreamed of," Matthew said, looking at Aileen lovingly. "A simple life full of love." "That's all we need," Aileen replied. "Together, we can face anything." Back at home, the family sat by the fire, sharing stories and reflecting on the year that had passed. Clara and Luke talked about their experiences at the orphanage and how they had held out hope of being reunited with Aileen. "I always knew you'd find us," Clara said, looking at Aileen with admiration. "Your love and determination kept us strong." Aileen smiled with tears in her eyes. "You are my world. I did everything I could to keep us together." Matthew, taking Aileen's hand, added, "Your bravery and love have transformed our lives. We couldn't have gotten here without you." Matthew had mentioned the idea of a rehabilitation hospital for the first time during one of his late-night conversations with Aileen. It was a quiet night, and as they sat in the garden, Matthew expressed his thoughts. "Aileen, during my recovery, I have thought a lot about how we can help others who are in similar situations to mine," Matthew said, looking up at the stars. "I want to found a rehabilitation hospital for people with reduced mobility." Aileen looked at him with admiration. "It's a wonderful idea, Matthew. Your experience and determination can inspire many." Matthew nodded. "I want it to be a place where people find hope and support, where they receive the care they need to get their lives back." The idea for the hospital began to take shape quickly. Matthew and Aileen met with experts in the field of rehabilitation, architects and doctors to discuss the project. They formed a committee with community members, including friends and neighbors, to make sure the hospital met everyone's needs. "We want to create a place that not only offers medical treatment, but also emotional and psychological support," Matthew explained during a meeting. "Recovery is a comprehensive process." Aileen added, "We must also include occupational therapy programs and recreational activities to help patients reintegrate into their daily lives." The hospital project required a significant investment, so Matthew and Aileen organized a series of fundraising events. The Valverde community, known for its solidarity, enthusiastically joined in to support the cause. Charity dinners, art auctions, and concerts were organized. Each event was a resounding success, raising funds and raising awareness of the importance of the project. "It's amazing to see how much support we've received," Aileen said during one of the charity dinners. "Everyone's generosity is bringing us closer to our dream." Matthew added, "This hospital will not only change lives, it will also strengthen our community. We are building something that will have a lasting impact." With funds raised and plans underway, construction of the hospital began. Matthew and Aileen oversaw every detail, making sure the design reflected their values and vision. The hospital was built with large, bright spaces, designed to promote an environment of healing and well-being. Areas for physical therapy, treatment rooms, recreational spaces, and therapeutic gardens were included. "I want every patient to feel like this place is a refuge, a place where they can find hope and support," Matthew said, as they toured the construction site. Aileen, seeing the progress, smiled. "We are creating something beautiful, Matthew. This hospital will be a legacy of love and compassion." After months of planning and construction, the hospital's opening day arrived. The community came together to celebrate this significant milestone. Matthew and Aileen, excited and proud, prepared to cut the inaugural ribbon. "Today is a day that marks the beginning of a new chapter for our community," Matthew said during his inaugural address. "This hospital is a testament to what we can achieve when we work together with a common purpose." Aileen added, "We are here to offer hope and healing to all who need it. This hospital is a place of love and care, and we are committed to making a difference in the lives of every patient." The hospital soon began receiving its first patients. Each of them came with stories of struggle and hope, seeking the support necessary to recover their lives. Matthew and Aileen were there to welcome each new patient, making sure they felt supported and valued. One of the first patients was a young woman named Laura, who had suffered a spinal cord injury. "I'm so grateful for this place," Laura said during a therapy session. "Here I feel like I can get my life back and find a new purpose." Patient testimonials began to spread, attracting more people in need of rehabilitation and support. The hospital became a beacon of hope for many, and Matthew and Aileen felt deeply gratified by the positive impact they were having on the community. With the hospital's initial success, Matthew and Aileen began thinking about ways to expand the programs and services offered. They decided to include a research center to develop new rehabilitation and therapy techniques. "We want to be at the forefront of rehabilitation and offer our patients the best possible options," Matthew said during a meeting with the hospital committee. "Research and innovation are key to our continued success." Aileen also proposed creating community outreach programs to educate people about injury prevention and the importance of a healthy lifestyle. "Education is essential," she said. "We can help prevent many of these injuries and improve the quality of life in our community." The hospital soon gained recognition, not only in Valverde, but also nationally. It became a model of excellence in rehabilitation and comprehensive care, attracting the attention of health professionals and organizations throughout the country. Matthew and Aileen were invited to conferences and seminars to share their experience and vision. "We are proud of what we have achieved," Aileen said during a presentation. "But our work doesn't end here. There is always more we can do to improve and expand our services." Inspired by the success of the hospital, Matthew and Aileen decided to create a foundation dedicated to supporting people with disabilities and reduced mobility. The foundation would offer scholarships, training programs, and financial support to those who needed it. "We want to make sure everyone has access to the rehabilitation and support they need, regardless of their financial situation," Matthew explained. "The foundation is our way to expand our reach and help more people." Aileen, excited by the initiative, added, "This foundation will be a vital resource for so many people. I am excited to see the impact we can have." With the foundation up and running and the hospital operating at full capacity, Matthew and Aileen reflected on all they had accomplished. They knew that their work created a lasting legacy that would continue to benefit the community and beyond for many years to come. "This hospital and the foundation are the result of our love and dedication," Matthew said, looking at Aileen with pride. "We have transformed lives and made a real difference in the world." Aileen smiled, feeling deep satisfaction. "And all of this is just the beginning. Together, we will continue to do good and create a better future for all." Aileen woke up one morning feeling different. She had noticed some changes in his body and a feeling of nausea that he had not experienced before. She decided it was time to visit the doctor to make sure everything was okay. "Matthew, I'm going to visit the doctor this morning," she told him as they ate breakfast. "I've been feeling a little strange lately." Matthew looked at her with concern. "Do you want me to accompany you?" "No, I'll be fine," Aileen responded with a reassuring smile. "It's just a routine check." At the clinic, Aileen explained her symptoms to the doctor. After a few questions and an examination, the doctor smiled. "Aileen, I have wonderful news for you," the doctor said. "You're expecting a baby." Aileen was left speechless, a mixture of surprise and joy flooding her heart. "A baby? Really?" The doctor nodded. "Yes, Aileen, congratulations. It looks like you're about 8 weeks pregnant." Aileen returned home with a radiant smile. She found Matthew in the study, reviewing some hospital documents. "Matthew, I have something incredible to tell you," she said, her voice full of emotion. Matthew looked up, curious. "What's wrong, Aileen?" Aileen approached and took her hands. "Matthew, we are expecting a baby." Matthew's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Really? Aileen, that's wonderful." He hugged her tightly, feeling deep gratitude and happiness. "It's the best news I could receive." That night, Aileen and Matthew gathered Clara and Luke in the living room. "We have very special news to share with you," Aileen said, smiling. Clara and Luke looked at each other with curiosity. "What's happening?" Clara asked. "We're going to have a baby," Matthew announced, smiling broadly. Clara and Luke rushed towards Aileen and Matthew, hugging them enthusiastically. "Let's be uncles!" Luke exclaimed, his voice filled with emotion. "I'm so happy for you," Clara said, tears of joy in her eyes. "This baby will be very lucky to have you as parents." With the news of the pregnancy, the family began to prepare for the arrival of the new member. Aileen and Matthew transformed one of the rooms into a cozy baby room, decorating it with soft colors and adorable toys. Clara and Luke actively participated in the preparations, excited by the arrival of their new brother or sister. "I can't wait to meet the baby," Clara said, as she hung a mobile over the crib. "He will be the best big brother," Luke added with a smile. The news of Aileen and Matthew's pregnancy spread quickly through the Valverde community. The neighbors organized a surprise party to celebrate the happy news. The house was filled with friends and family, all eager to congratulate the couple. "We are so happy for you," Mrs. Smith said, handing Aileen a beautiful hand-knit shawl. "This baby will be loved by all of us." Aileen, moved by the community's support, thanked everyone. "Thank you for always being by our side. This baby will be very lucky to grow up in such a wonderful community." Aileen attended all of her prenatal visits with enthusiasm, taking care of her health and that of the baby. Matthew accompanied her to each appointment, eager to hear the baby's heartbeat and see her ultrasounds. "Everything is going very well," the doctor told them in one of the consultations. "The baby is growing strong and healthy." Matthew squeezed Aileen's hand, smiling. "I can't wait to meet our little one." As the pregnancy progressed, Aileen and Matthew spent long nights talking about the future and their hopes for their son. "I want our son to grow up in a home full of love and support," Aileen said, caressing her belly. "And we will," Matthew responded. "We will teach you the values of family, community, and the importance of helping others." Aileen nodded, feeling deep peace. "Our son will be very lucky to have you as a father, Matthew." As the due date approached, the family made final preparations. Aileen made sure everything was ready in the baby's room, and Matthew organized his time at the hospital so he could be present during the birth. Clara and Luke also prepared, eager for the arrival of the new member of the family. "I'm going to be the best big brother," Luke promised, practicing lullabies for the baby. Finally, the day arrived. Matthew took Aileen to the hospital, where they were greeted by a friendly and professional medical team. "Every day, Aileen," Matthew said, holding her hand as they took her to the delivery room. After hours of labor, a baby's cries filled the room. "He's a boy," the doctor announced, handing the newborn to Aileen. Aileen, with tears of joy, looked at her son for the first time. "Hello, my little one," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." Matthew, excited, kissed Aileen's forehead. "He is perfect, Aileen. Our son is perfect." Arriving home with the baby was a moment full of joy and emotion. Clara and Luke, eager to meet her brother, approached carefully. "He's so small," Clara said, looking at the baby in amazement. "Hello, little brother," Luke said with a smile. "We are going to take good care of you." Aileen and Matthew watched the scene with hearts full of love and gratitude. "We have created a wonderful family," Matthew said, hugging Aileen. "And this is just the beginning." With the arrival of the baby, life in Matthew and Aileen's house was filled with new routines and joys. Every day was an adventure, and the family quickly adapted to their new dynamic. "Our son has brought us indescribable happiness," Aileen said one night as they watched the baby sleep. "This is the beginning of a beautiful chapter in our lives." Matthew nodded, feeling deep peace. "Together, we will face any challenge and celebrate every triumph. We are a family and always will be." Aileen and Matthew sat in the garden, enjoying the afternoon sun while watching their little son play with Clara and Luke. The peace and happiness they felt were the result of years of struggle, effort, and love. "It's been an incredible trip," Aileen said, leaning into Matthew's shoulder. "Since we met, we've been through so much, but here we are, stronger than ever." Matthew nodded with a look full of gratitude. "We have accomplished so much together. Our family, the hospital, the community. Everything is a testament to our love and determination." Aileen smiled, watching her son laugh with his brothers. "And now, with our little one, we have a new chapter full of hope and promise." One afternoon, while Aileen was in the kitchen and Matthew was working in the study, Matthew's son Daniel arrived without warning. He hadn't visited in a while, and his presence was a surprise to everyone. "Daniel, what a surprise to see you," Matthew said, standing up from his desk. "What brings you here?" Daniel, with an expression of regret, approached his father. "Dad, I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. I've seen what you've accomplished with the hospital, how you've changed lives, and how you've built a wonderful family." Matthew looked at him curiously. "What do you mean, Daniel?" Daniel sighed deeply, searching for the right words. "I want to apologize for my past behavior. I was selfish and blind to everything you were doing. I didn't see the magnitude of your struggle and your success. I'm proud of you, Dad, and I'm sorry I didn't recognize it sooner." Matthew felt a wave of emotions, surprised by his son's words. "Daniel, your apology means a lot to me. I have always wanted the best for you, and I hope we can move forward and build a stronger relationship." Daniel nodded, tears in his eyes. "I'd love that, Dad. I want to be part of this family and contribute to everything you've accomplished." That night, the family gathered in the living room, including Daniel. The atmosphere was full of love and reconciliation. Aileen, holding her baby in her arms, looked at Matthew with a smile. "This is the result of all our effort and love," said Aileen. "We have overcome so many challenges and have managed to build something beautiful." Clara, sitting near her, added, We have learned that with love and unity, there is nothing we cannot overcome. Luke, caressing the baby's head, said with a smile, "Our future is bright because we are together." Matthew and Aileen decided to organize a community celebration to thank everyone for their support and to reflect on everything they had achieved together. The house and yard were filled with neighbors, friends, and family, all there to celebrate the family's unity and success. Matthew spoke up, his voice full of emotion. "We want to thank you all for being with us every step of the way. This hospital, our family, everything we have accomplished would not have been possible without your love and support." Aileen, holding her baby, added, "We have learned that true strength comes from community and family. We are eternally grateful for everything they have done for us." After the celebration, the family gathered in their living room, reflecting on the day and all they had accomplished. Matthew, with a satisfied smile, looked at his family. "We've come a long way," he said, "and although we have faced many challenges, we have always emerged stronger and more united." Aileen nodded, stroking her baby's head. "Our love and determination have brought us this far, and I know that the future has many good things in store for us." Clara and Luke, sitting nearby, also reflected the same feelings. "We're ready for whatever comes," Clara said, "because we know we will always be together." The next morning, the family woke up with a renewed sense of hope and gratitude. Aileen and Matthew, walking along the beach with their son in their arms, reflected on everything they had achieved and what awaited them. "We've created something beautiful here," Matthew said, looking at the horizon, "and I know that our love and our family will only grow stronger with time." Aileen smiled, feeling deep peace. "Yes, Matthew, this is just the beginning of a bright and loving future." The story of Matthew and Aileen is a journey full of challenges, love, perseverance, and redemption. From the beginning, we have seen how two people with different lives found themselves in the midst of adversity, and how through mutual support and dedication, they managed to transform their lives and those of those around them. Aileen, a strong and determined woman, fought tirelessly to keep her family together after the tragic death of her mother. Her bravery and determination led her to care for Matthew, a rich man who had lost all hope after a brutal attack that left him paraplegic. Together, they faced not only the physical challenges of Matthew's recovery, but also the family tensions and internal struggles they both carried with them. Throughout their journey, Matthew and Aileen not only helped themselves, but also extended their compassion and support to their community. The creation of the Rehabilitation Hospital is a testament to his desire to give back to society and to use his personal experiences to inspire and help others. The Valverde community, united by love and solidarity, played a crucial role every step of the way, showing that true power lies in unity and mutual support. Matthew's reconciliation with his son Daniel is a powerful example of how forgiveness and understanding can heal the deepest wounds. Through acceptance and apology, they were able to rebuild their relationship and strengthen family ties. Love, perseverance, and unity are the most powerful forces that exist. No matter how dark the times are or how many challenges we face, there is always hope and possibility of transformation when we are together. By helping each other and standing firm in our values, we can overcome any adversity and create a future full of love, hope, and opportunities. The story of Matthew and Aileen teaches us that, although life may present seemingly insurmountable obstacles, true strength lies in our love for others and our ability to fight for a better tomorrow. The key to success and happiness is not in material wealth but in the relationships we build and the positive impact we leave in the world. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of love, perseverance, and redemption. If you enjoyed the story of Matthew and Aileen, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content. Leave us a comment with your thoughts and which part of the story touched your heart the most. Until next time, and always remember that with love and unity, anything is possible.